In this Warmaster Battle report, the Orcs take on the Wood Elves in a game inspired by a scenario from Warhammer history. Forenrond Breezenimble is our Wood Elf general, whose fame is only exceeded by his incompetence. Mandrax the Murderer is the leader of the Open Sore Orc tribe and is the antagonist in this scenario. The game will be played on a 180cm by 120cm battlefield, and the scenery represents the edges of the Forest of Lauren, where Forenrond's army has ventured forth in search of the nearby Orc camp, intending to drive them from their borders. However, the cunning Mandrax has lured the Wood Elf army into a trap, drawing them out of the safety of their forest and into open ground, where his Orcs can ambush them. The armies are selected to 2,000 points, and the game will be played until one army is forced to withdraw. We shall be using the most up-to-date version of the Warmaster Revolution Rules Compendium and the Warmaster Revolution Army Lists. The battlefield features 3 hills which are open ground and grant infantry or artillery defended status. There are 4 woods which are dense terrain and grant infantry defended status. There are 3 buildings which are impassable. There are 2 lakes which are classed as deep water features and therefore impassable. There are 3 fields which cannot be entered by artillery or chariots and deny chargers their charge bonus. And there are 4 roads which grant units in column formation a command bonus while upon them. For this battle we're going to be showcasing 2 experimental rules from an upcoming UK tournament. They are designed to encourage players to throw their generals into combat, by adding a victory points incentive for doing so and also reducing the risk of losing the game. The rule is called "The King is Dead, Long Live the King", and is taken from the Battle of 5 Armies rule set. If your general is killed in the game, you don't automatically lose. Instead, you may make a command test with the next highest command level character for them to take over as general. If successful, the army does not withdraw and play continues as normal. In addition, if you attach your general to a unit in combat, then any enemy unit destroyed by your unit with the general attached earns double victory points. So now let's review the Wood Elf army. Forenrond's Elven host features 4 units of Glade Guard, 4 units of Dryads, and 4 units of Wild Riders. There's 1 unit of Warhawks, 3 units of Treekin, and 2 Tree Men. It is commanded by Forenrond, the general, with 1 Treeman Ancient and 1 Spellweaver on a Warhawk. Breakpoint is 9. Next we look at the Open Sore boys. Mandrax tribe features 5 Orc warriors and 1 unit of Black Orcs, 4 units of Goblins and 1 unit of Ogres. There are 3 Boar Riders and 1 Wolf Riders, with 1 unit of Wolf Chariots. There are 2 Giants and 2 Rock Lobbers. It is led by Mandrax the Murderer, the Orc General, 2 Orc Heroes, one of which is mounted on a Wyvern, 2 Goblin Shaman and an Orc Shaman. Breakpoint is 10. The Orcs have sprung their trap and deploy their scouting units on their right flank. Orc hero Gratnat Nak, mounted on his Wyvern, commands here, with Ernie's Roamers, a unit of Wolf Riders, sniffing out the elf opposition. As the glittering elven host marches through the trees and onto the battlefield, Mandrax the Murderer springs his trap. Goblin archers, hidden in ambush either side of the elven column, take careful aim at the elven general. With a sudden flurry of bowfire, Forenrond takes 3 goblin arrows to the neck and falls dead from his horse. With their impetuous leader slain, the elves quickly reorganize their ranks, and Corma Lightmantle, Forenrond's second in command, takes over as the army general. Can the elves now turn the tables on the orcs? Corma begins by deploying the elves of Galdrala on his right flank. These are 2 units of Glade Guard. The 1st Elven Cavalry also deploys on the right. These are 2 units of Wild Riders. They are commanded by Atlanta, who is an elf spellweaver mounted on a warhawk. The 3rd Elven cavalry deploy at the rear of the army. This is one unit of warhawk riders. The mobile scenery deploys over the central hill. This consists of 2 Treemen monsters, 3 units of Treeken heavy infantry, and 4 units of Dryad light infantry. They are commanded by the Treeman Ancient, Okie Bloki. The 2nd Elven Cavalry deploy on the left flank. These are 2 more units of Wild Riders. Corma Lightmantle, the newly promoted general, takes command here. And on the far left, the Elves of Irelanth deploy in the woods. These are 2 more units of Glade Guard. The army has deployed in one long thin line throughout its deployment zone. This tactic makes it harder for the Orcs to outflank the Elven line with their cavalry, while the strongest Elven units are at the centre, able to respond to any Orc aggression. The weakest Elven units occupy the flanks, where they can hide in the dense terrain. Mandrax now deploys his army, starting with Peps's Killers on his left flank. These are 2 units of Orc Boys. They are commanded by Peps the Real Fang Sawtooth, an Orc hero. Accompanying them are Neo's Nasties, a unit of Goblin Chariots. On centre right are Mandrax the Murderer's Mad Molesters, a unit of Black Orcs and a unit of Ogres. And they are supported by the Open Sore Scabby Shooters, 2 units of Goblins. On the central hill are 2 more units of Goblins, Gruesome Jobbo's Gobbo Bows. And they are commanded by Neo Nutcracker, an Orc Shaman, and also Gruesome Jobbo and Nobbler Jenkins, 2 Goblin Shaman. Also on the hill are the Manmangler and the Skullcrusher, 2 Orc Rock Lobbers. Mandrax the Murderer takes up position on the right of the hill. He is the army general. Next to him are the Pig Stickers, 3 units of Orc Boys. Whilst lurking on the road are the Mother Crushers, 2 giants. On the right flank next to Ernie's Roamers are Driller's Killers, 3 units of Orc Boar Boys. The Orc army has deployed in deeper lines than the Elven one. This will allow them to concentrate more force across a shorter frontage, and ensures that more units can benefit from the overlapping command ranges of numerous characters. However, this army deployment does have large flanks, which the tricksy elves may be able to exploit. The armies are now ready for battle, and the generals begin to plot their tactics. The standard tactics for Wood Elf armies is to hide your archers in the woods and let the Forest Spirit units do all the fighting. Corma Lightmantle is only too aware that should he lose this battle, the bards will sing songs of not his, but Forenrond's last stand. The battle begins with Atlanta ordering the Elves of Galdrala forwards on the right flank, heading towards the cover of the nearby woods. She follows this up with an order to the 1st Elven Cavalry, who match pace alongside the archers. However, her order to the nearby Forest Spirit Brigade fails, so they only stumble forwards half pace. Okie Bloki manages to order remaining Forest Spirit infantry down off the hill in good order, but Corma's first order of the game cannot be understood by the remaining tree spirits, and they only move at half pace. With Corma failing an order, the Elven command phase ends, and characters then move ahead of the army ready for next turn. The Orc turn begins with Gratnak on the right flank ordering the Orc Cavalry Brigade forwards to the edge of the fields. He then attempts to order the Giants but fails, and both Giants have to roll on the Giant Goes Wild table. This results in one Giant going for a stroll forwards down the road, while the second Giant picks up a rock and throws it at the back of the first Giant's head, driving him back and confusing him. On the left flank, Peps's Killers and Neo's Nasties move forward as one brigade, whilst on the central hill, Gruesome Jobbo's Gobbo Bows and the Rock Lobbers take up firing positions. Meanwhile, Mandrax the Murderer's Mad Molesters, supported by the Scabby Shooters, surge forward on the central road, whilst on centre right the Pig Stickers move up to act as a buffer between the two aggravated giants. Orc characters then move ahead of their units ready to issue orders next turn, while the Shaman ready their spells. With a roar of "Get off!", one unit of the 1st Elven Cavalry is sent scuttling back towards its own board edge. Another Geroff smashes into a unit of Treekin, but their supporting infantry refuse to make way, which leads to them being automatically confused. Finally, the Orc Rock Lobbers smash stones down into a second unit of Treekin, driving them back into their supporting infantry and likewise confusing them. The Elves begin their second turn with the 3rd Elven Cavalry homing back towards Okie Blokey. Atlanta orders the Elves of Galdrala to take up firing positions within the nearby wood. But her orders to the 1st Elven Cavalry fail, and they are left out of position. In the centre, the Treeman Ancient orders up the Forest Spirit Brigade, which got left behind last turn. The General then orders up remaining Forest Spirit units to form a solid battle line across the centre. Korma then orders the 2nd Elven Cavalry to move within charge distance of the Orc Cavalry, lurking by the fields. A second order is issued and the charge succeeds, with Wild Riders making contact with Wolf Riders and Boar Boys. The Goblins stand and shoot as the Elves bear down on them, inflicting some minor damage. At the end of the command phase, the Treeman Ancient moves across to join the combat. Remaining Elven characters then move forwards ready to issue orders next turn. In combat, the charging Wild Riders inflict 6 hits on the Wolf Riders, who cause 1 hit in return for a total of 2 on the Wild Riders. Another unit of Wild Riders, accompanied by the Treeman character, inflict 9 hits on the Boar Boys, with the terrified Boar Boys managing 3 in return. The Orcs lose combat and must remove their casualties first. The surviving Goblin stand retreats backwards, forcing the Boar Boys behind to make way. One unit of Wild Riders then pursues into the surviving Goblins, whilst the second unit, having destroyed their Boar Boy opponents, makes an advance move into a second unit of Boar Boys. The Goblins are quickly wiped out for no loss against the Elves, and the first unit of Wild Riders then advances into a third unit of Boar Boys. Over the next 2 combat rounds, the Elves roll particularly well, wiping out another unit of Boar Boys and reducing the third to a single stand. In return, the Boar Boys do manage to inflict casualties upon the Elves, reducing both Wild Rider units to a single stand each. The Elves then decide to fall back in good order, and reposition themselves to face the nearby Orc units, ready for a counter-charge.
Time to get stuck in, boys!
The Orcs begin their second turn with the sole surviving stand of Boar Boys making an initiative charge into the 2 remaining stands of Wild Riders and the Treeman character. Gratnak then orders one of the giants to move forwards to within charge range of the Elves. He then gives a second successful order to the Brute, who thunders into combat alongside the Boar Boys. Flushed with success, Gratnak tries to order the second giant into the same combat, but he can't quite reach. On the left flank, Peps orders the Orc infantry and Goblin chariots up to within charge range of the Wild Riders. However, the order to charge fails. In the centre, the Mad Molesters take the open ground, whilst the Pig Stickers continue slowly moving up the road. Leading from the front, Mandrax the Murderer joins the giant in combat with the Wild Riders and Treeman character. In a move which is less tactically sound but equally brave, Gratnak and his Wyvern join the single stand of Boar Boys fighting the other Wild Riders. The Orc battle line has now become somewhat ragged due to casualties and units heading off in separate directions. Orc characters begin to move ahead of the battle line ready for orders next turn. And in the shooting phase, the Rock Lobbers once again pound the Treekin, forcing them to stumble back into the Dryads and become confused. In combat, the Boar Boys and Wyvern Rider take a hit, but deal 3 in return to the Wild Riders, killing 1 unit. Mandrax the Murderer and the Giant then repeat the process on the other single stand of surviving Wild Riders, wiping the unit out along with the accompanying character Okie Blokey. Due to the scenario special rules, Mandrax will earn double victory points not only for the unit he has just killed, but also for the character that was wiped out with them. The victorious Orc units and their attached characters then fall back in good order to brigade up against the Pig Stickers. The Orcs have lost virtually all their cavalry, which gives the mobility advantage to the Elves. However, the Elves have now lost one of their characters, so this does even the playing field. Do the Elves have time to hit the Orcs again before the Greenskin infantry reaches their lines? And what can the Orcs do to prevent the Elves from running circles around them? Whatever happens next, the Orcs have certainly racked up an impressive tally of victory points this turn due to the scenario conditions. At the start of Elf turn 3, Atlanta orders the 1st Elven Cavalry to charge straight into Neo's Nasties and Peps's Killers. The 3rd Elven Cavalry is then ordered to land behind the Greenskin units, although they must stay more than 1 centimetre away. Korma then begins to order the non-confused units of Forest Spirits up towards the centre. In combat, the Wild Riders thunder into the Orcs and Goblins, smashing through their lines and causing heavy damage. The Greenskins fight back and inflict enough damage to remove a stand from each of the Wild Rider units. The Greenskins lose combat and retreat, but as they only lost combat by a single point, it's not far enough for the Warhawks to destroy them. The Wild Riders then elect to pursue and have to move straight forwards into the retreating units. This means that one unit of Orcs which was previously supporting is now fighting, whilst the original unit of Orcs which was fighting has now dropped out of combat due to casualty removal. Neo's Nasties are all cut down, while Peps's Killers take heavy casualties. After 2 rounds of combat, the Goblin Wolf Chariots are destroyed and both units of Orcs are reduced to a single stand, whilst the Wild Riders have also lost 3 of their stands. The victorious Wild Rider stands pursue the remaining stand of Orcs that they can see, locking them into combat for next round, whilst the Warhawks can only sit and watch the battle raging around them. At the start of Orc turn 3, Mandrax the Murderer's Mad Molesters use their initiative to charge into the Treekin in front of them, dragging the Scabby Shooters in support. The 2nd unit of the Mad Molesters charge into the Warhawks, and again more Scabby Shooters support them. On the right flank, both Giants and the Pig Stickers lumber forwards through the fields, whilst the single surviving stand of Drillers Killers wisely retreats to the back lines. The Orc Rock Lobbers continue to pound Treekin, confusing them again and slowing their advance, whilst in the magic phase, the Greenskin Shaman empower the Mad Molesters with a war.
War! Smash 'em!
In combat, the Mad Molesters force the Warhawks to retreat from them in combat, killing off a stand. Meanwhile, the 1st Elven Cavalry finish off the remains of Peps's Killers. The victorious units on both sides then fall back in good order to set up charges for next turn, as the Mad Molesters cannot pursue the flying Warhawks. In the centre, the Mad Molesters, empowered by the Spirit of the War, cut down 2 whole stands of Treekin, whilst the Forest Spirits take down 1 stand of Black Orcs in return. The Forest Spirits manage to draw combat thanks to their support, so the Orcs have to fall back in good order to await the countercharge next turn. At the start of Elf turn 4, the vengeful Forest Spirits use their initiative to charge into the waiting Black Orcs, with the Wild Riders and Warhawks likewise charging the Ogres. Korma then reorders the remaining Forest Spirits to form lines awaiting the final Orc charges. With the aid of the Treeman, the Treekin and Dryads cut down the last 2 stands of Black Orcs and pursue into the supporting Goblins, while the Warhawks and Wild Riders crunch through the Ogres, who can offer little resistance. In the 2nd round of combat, the Ogres are cut down, and the victorious Elven units then pursue into the supporting Goblins, although they lose a 2nd stand of Warhawks in the process. The Orc army is now teetering close to its break point, So can they inflict enough damage on the elves to give them a bloody nose before the orcs withdraw? In a last-ditch attempt to garner them more victory points, the orcs attempt to charge both giants into the waiting forest spirits, but the vital orders fail. The distance is also too great for the pigstickers to make it into combat. Mandrax then orders the shaman and the rock lobbers to target any available elven units and finish them with shooting. Neo Nutcracker lines up a gotcha spell straight down the line of Wild Riders and Warhawks. The spell goes off and is absolutely devastating, removing 2 whole stands of Wild Riders and severely damaging the Warhawks. However, these hits will count as being caused in the first round of combat, so we leave the wound markers in place to show which stands will be able to fight back. A single surviving stand of Treekin draws the rock lobbers' attention.
Smash 'em!
And the remnants of the unit are reduced to matchwood. In combat, the goblins manage to kill off the last stand of Warhawks before they are all cut down. The victorious Wild Riders then make an advance move into the flank of the engaged goblins fighting Treekin, and the goblins are cut down in short order, inflicting no damage in return. This final combat has brought the orcs to their withdrawal point, and the orcs surrender the field to the Wood Elves. But who has won? Because the orcs cause so much damage to the Wood Elf army in their final turn, if the orc victory point total is higher than the Wood Elves, the game will be a draw, whereas if the Wood Elves have scored more victory points, they will win. So Korma has successfully led the elves in a defence of the orc ambush and forced Mandrax to return to his camp to plot his next strategy. Unfortunately, the orcs cause so much damage to the elf army that they cannot claim a victory, and this is entirely down to the scenario special rule which we used, allowing Mandrax to score double victory points for a unit of Wild Riders and a Treeman Ancient. Both sides experienced their share of good and bad fortune, with the elves dominating the movement and securing the most charges, and the Wild Riders in particular rolling exceptionally well in combat. Meanwhile, the orcs struggled with their orders, but then turned the game around in their final turn with some devastating magic and shooting. So let's hear what the players have to say about this battle.
Orcs, 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 orcs.
So my thoughts on the game are that the orcs really let me down on the flanks, that my cavalry brigade on here was crushed way too easily by the elves, didn't put up much of a fight, and it was only saved by the intervention of the general, taking down the Treeman Ancient and getting double points as per the scenario. The other flank was the same story, where the ogres really let me down by underperforming, but on the last turn of the game the wizards held it to a draw for me by destroying plenty of elves and their flyers with their spells. Happy with the result.
So, we dance a dance of battle again.
Yeah, I was reasonably happy with how that went. On my left flank, my Wild Riders pushed up and managed to pretty much destroy 4 units of John's cavalry. On my right flank, my Flyers and my other Wild Riders managed to see off the brigade on his left flank. The follow-up move with the General and the Giants and the Wyvern, I wasn't expecting, and I think ultimately that's probably what cost me the game, with the double points for finishing off my Treeman Ancient and the 1 unit of Wild Riders. The battle went quite well for me in the middle, and I was just sort of rolling into John's left flank at the end when his wizards got off a barrage of missile attacks into my units in combat, and managed to vaporise quite a few units, which I think, combined with the double points for the units I lost on the left flank, ultimately cost me a victory. But on the whole, I think it was a pretty fair result. It was, yeah, good evening going.